Did anyone realize we just had the summer solstice? It's so funny that summer starts like halfway through June or the end of June, right? Especially when you live in Missouri and it's already hot. But the summer solstice and this changing of seasons, this changing of times, is known as being a time where we go into the cycle of stewarding that which is growing, planting seeds, nourishing and nurturing them, and moving into a new season. You know, there is a lot of nature that is, in fact, all of nature, right, is a reflection of God consciousness. And if we really look at the creative process in nature, we can see the creative process within ourselves. We can see how we too are like nature, that we too operate with seasons and times and timings. And this season is the cycle of birth, of death, of rebirth. We've got summers, we've got falls, we've got winter, and we're lucky that in Missouri we get to see them and feel them. Sometimes the fall and the spring are shorter than many of us would like, but they're still here. And how does that reflect life? If fall or spring is your favorite season, do you get disturbed when it's shorter? And when all of a sudden it's summer and it's in the 90s? Today we're looking at the idea of perfection and imperfection. We're looking at the idea of worn and torn versus polished and perfect. What keeps you from valuing the seasons of your life? What keeps you in a place where part of your mind may get caught up judging things that look worn and torn as less than? Is there anything in you that thinks of everything that looks pretty and polished and perfect as better, that puts it higher or above other things, that devalues old things, that devalues age spots or wrinkles, that devalues things that have been used? One of my favorite things is giving over and getting what I call hand-me-overs. I don't call them hand-me-downs because I don't think there's anything down about them. But I love that, and I love that because there's an essence in things. I love going over to John Knox Village and looking at like the old fancy couches that were there and thinking that this was in some beautiful grandma's house and it was taken care of and it was treated like this or like that. And I like thinking of that. I like getting baby clothes from friends and knowing that that little one was in there and, you know, that baby was put to sleep and it woke up and it giggled and the parents watched the child grow. I love that about old things that are sometimes what we would call worn and torn. But we have a bit of an obsession in our culture. And when we have a physical obsession with materiality, sometimes it grows into something that affects our own psyche in inner ways. Do you know what I'm saying? That even if we think it's about material things and how we value or don't value them, it starts reflecting upon us and what we value about ourselves and our own lives. And if everything needs to be perfect and pretty and polished, how much does that support us on this journey of the human condition? How many of your lives, like Adam said when he welcomed us this morning, how many of our lives have been perfect, pretty, and polished all of the time? How many of them are now? I want to share a couple stories this morning. One is of my sister. Both of my sisters have these special teddies that they had from when they were born. I don't know where my teddy was. I guess I didn't get one. But they both have these teddies that are these very, very special teddies. And hers is this little pink teddy. And I've always been a cleaner. I've been someone that would come over, and even with my college friends that would have really messy houses, if they had a party, they would know that I'd be somewhere folding their laundry, or I'd be in the bathroom cleaning and scrubbing things, or I'd be in the kitchen and in the refrigerator clearing it out and getting rid of the old stuff. It's just something that people knew about me. And so this sister had this little pink teddy, or has this little pink teddy. And, you know, she was in her 30s at the time. And I saw this teddy, and it's so, she was so worn and torn, right? That her little nose was finally coming off, and her little nose was flopping down, and like stuffing was coming out. So I was visiting her one time, and I got out the needle and thread, and I started sewing the nose back on. And I had to kind of like recreate it a little bit, but I made it the way it was, and I put that little nose on, and I was really, proud of myself and thinking, oh, it's going to help this little guy live longer, right? And she got home, and I showed her the teddy, and I could see the look on her face, like really not wanting to hurt my feelings, but going, why did you touch my teddy's nose? Because in her mind, that was the perfection of that little guy, of that little pink bear. There was no problem in that nose falling off or the stuffing coming out. It probably reminded her of every little kiss, every tear, every snuggle, every roll over in bed where that nose got more and more worn and torn. And it taught me something. Luckily, I have a very gentle sister. It wouldn't have been the same way if it had been her to me. There probably would have been tears and screaming and making sure she could feel how I felt in that moment, because that was my style, but her style was very graceful always, is. And so I learned something in that moment, in her grace. I learned that sometimes things that are worn and torn, sometimes things that don't look right, sometimes things that seem messy are perfect. The last time I was in Ireland, I've gone to Ireland a few times, and the last time I was spending some time in Dublin with my family. And I don't know why I thought of this time and hadn't noticed it any other time. Maybe because I got a car within the last few years. I used to drive an old Subaru, and what I loved about driving that old Subaru, besides the fact that it drove amazingly, was that you didn't have to worry about it because it was so old, so you didn't worry about any ding or ting or bing or anything like that, whereas now it's like, oh, hail. Is it going to hail again? I'm going to have to call Michael. I went through a little drive-through and lightly opened the door, and it tapped on this little piece of metal and scratch. And there's a part of me that goes, like something bad happened, right? But with the Subaru, it was like, someone dings me a little bit. That's all right, don't worry, keep going, you're good. So the last time I was in Ireland, I was there on the streets of Dublin, and all of a sudden I noticed everyone driving around in all the cars. And as I looked at car after car after car after car after car, it was nearly impossible to find a car that looked nice. Like that literally was dent-free or had no parts of the paint that were off. All of the cars that I saw going through the streets of Dublin, and European cars are like, a little bit smaller and, a little bit boxy and packed in places. And I just thought, how interesting. And I just got this sense, so I don't see any fancy, slick, cleaned, car washed, polished cars. And I thought to myself, well, that would be kind of refreshing, especially driving around in this traffic that I'm seeing in Dublin and parking here. Think of the stress that would be gone, if you're not worried about that, or if you don't think, oh, I got to have money to fix that if something happens. And I realized they're not even spending their money on fixing it unless it has to do with what really makes the car work for them. They're not even worried about it. A car there is meant to get you places, and it's meant to get old along the way. And I was like, well, isn't that a concept? And I really noticed that there is a difference in my mind living here, living in my little world, that I have a concept, things are supposed to stay nice, or stay perfect, or stay smooth, or stay undented, right? If you got a car, well, let's not knock on wood. If you got a dent, nobody's getting a dent today. But if you did, would you think immediately, how much is that going to cost to fix it? Or would you think, I got that dent on the way to this wedding and I'm always going to remember it. That's pretty cool. Can you see the mindset change? Just the shift and the difference. And then breathe into the possibility that this mindset affects our entire lives, our spiritual lives, our emotional lives. That we create a lot of emotions and we create a lot of creation from our mindset. How conscious are we of it? Close your eyes for a minute and be there with me in the streets of Ireland. Picture the streets of Dublin. Big buildings, lots of cars, lots of horns, people getting around. Just look at all the cars. No one cares what they look like, if they're dented, tattered, torn. Cars have a different purpose there. They're for getting us to life events. They drove someone, you see them in the street driving to meet a lover or a friend. They just delivered someone to the hospital to birth a baby. They brought someone to a pub where they meet their friends every Wednesday afternoon at 4. There they are, dragging down a surfboard from their flat and wrapping it on the top of the car, scratching it up a little bit, going to the coast to get a good surf in. And they shake it off and put it back on the top of the car with a bit of extra salt that stains the roof. There's another one carting around little kids that are throwing food or throwing up. There they go to their grandparents' house through the hustle and the bustle of the streets, the road they drive every week to have dinner with the family. There they are parking in places that are too tight to fit in a hurry to get to do life. There they are bumping into each other and just giving each other a wink and a nod because it's not such a big deal. There they are parking in places that are too small, covered, or too crowded. But they can see the parade from there. They can walk to the festival from there. They can get to the park or to the gathering. Look at these cars and see how they show signs of life. These cars don't care if they're clean or painted or polished or bruised or tattered or torn. They care where they went. And maybe, just maybe, there wasn't so much time and money and intelligence spent on keeping it perfect and polished. And maybe that loosened up some more time and some more mental energy and some more money to do some other things. All of those cars deliver their drivers to life. I invite you to open your eyes. Everything around us is here to deliver us to life. And it doesn't have to look pretty, does it? I got a beautiful piece of pottery a long time ago. I was in high school. And I got a beautiful piece of pottery from my boyfriend that I adored at the time. And, you know, when you're in high school, to get a nice piece of pottery is a big deal. Like, that was like a fancy gift. And I remember opening it, and my little brother, who was about 1 at the time, was in the room with me. And it was on the bed. We were opening it. And somehow, in an instant, as happens, he grabbed it or pulled it or something, and it rolled off the bed and cracked, and the lip cracked off, or something cracked off of the pit. It was a pitcher. And I noticed myself thinking, and then he, as little kids do, and he may have been older than one, but he just looked right up at me, like, when they look at you, if they fall, to see, like, am I supposed to cry, or is it okay to do something else here? And he looked up at me, and I remember the moment of feeling so disappointed inside, like it's ruined. Something I loved is ruined. But then seeing this beautiful little boy and recognizing he's so much more important, and how he sees me react in this moment is so much more important. And I remember just loving him and saying, it's okay, whatever it was, it's okay, okay. And then just putting that piece back on and putting it up on a shelf and thinking I'll fix that later. And fully realizing in that moment that that piece of pottery just became more special. So much more special. Because never again would my little brother be that little. And would I have had the opportunity to be aware when being with him and watching him? And something that was handmade and a beautiful gift and a thoughtful gift that was given to me was now something that was a full reminder of love. And then I'd look at every time and go, man, I was so lucky to have that time with my little brother and to see his little face. And I knew it would be a reminder forever rather than just a piece of pottery that was nicely made and expensive and given to me at a time that it touched me. But it was the awareness that I felt and I celebrated. Do you think this is hormones or is this real? Just kidding. Every time I went through all the quotes, I was like, is this hormones or is this real? I'm pretty sure this is real. It's all real. Do we value life living itself in and through as us, in and through and as everything around us? Because the way we show up to things, the way we value things, is sometimes how we value our inner landscape. And hearts can get worn and torn and tattered. They can get broken open, broken up. And life can be rough and rocky. It cannot go according to the plan. We can think it's all polished in one moment, and the next moment, there it is, scratched up. Can we dive into the value of that? The beauty of that? The process of changing our awareness helps us change our minds to value all of the seasons of life, the richness of life, for everything it has to offer. Can we exchange the concept of perfect for perfectly imperfect and allow ourselves to fall in love with it? Can we call uncomfortable stretching, growing, expanding? Can we call messy creative chaos? Can we call worn and torn loved and well used? Could we allow our pictures of life, how it's supposed to go, what we're supposed to be like, to lift up and open up to the truth that you are right where you need to be. You are who you need to be, all tattered and worn, rusty and torn, perfectly positioned in every moment for your greatness? Can we believe in that possibility? Can we trust that things happen at the right time? And can we begin to make it cool to use old stuff? I have an old friend who used to always want, even before he would learn how to use something, so if he was going to get into kayaking, if he was going to get into skiing, he would want the best skis, he would want the best kayak. He would want the best of whatever it is before he even knows how to do it. And that would support him, no judgment, but that would support him in getting into it, right? And he would get good at those things. But I realized in being friends with him how cool it was that some of the people that had like the oldest kayak or the oldest pair of skis, right, were like the rock stars on the slope. Like, you've got this just grubby old pair of skis that probably no one could even make work, but that guy makes them look like, whew. Anyone have an old instrument? An old guitar is one of the most valuable things. More valuable than any new guitar because it gets seasoned, because it's played, it's loved. An old heart that has been through some rough stuff is one of the most beautiful things on the planet. Let the wrinkles on your face be a sign that you laughed. Let the dents in your car be evidence you had someplace fun to go. Let all of the things that are old and worn and torn in your home and in your life that you've used be signs that you're using things and you love your life. I got this blanket. I'm a big, cozy person. Whenever I have friends at the house, they're like, you have all these nooks and crannies, these places and blankies. And I got this blanket, and I was so excited because I found a paisley blanket. I don't know how much you can see this blanket from there. But I was so excited to have this blanket. And I put it on the bottom of my bed thinking, one of my favorite snuggly paisleys. It was brand new. And my kitty loved this blanket. She loved it so much she couldn't stop. You know when they just... And she pawed into it, and I noticed as she was pawing into it, it's like it's ruining every little spot of the blanket. But she loved it so much, and she was in such ecstasy every time she pawed at it that I just let her, and probably within a week it looked like this. And I thought about getting rid of it, but it turned into her blanket. And that's my kitty that made her transition this last year. And so now what is that but a sweet spot? Imagine if I had taken her paws off of it and said, no, that was my blanket. It's supposed to be perfect. Are we willing to let life work on us? Are we willing to get used up to show signs of love, signs of expansion? I have a friend who recently lost a parent, and he said, there really is a sacred reminder in profound loss. There really is a sacred reminder in profound loss. That profound loss is one of those wake-up calls that allows you to see what's important in a moment, what's important in life. So can we allow ourselves, even without profound loss, to let life use us up in a good way? George Bernard Shaw said, this is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one. The being thoroughly worn out before you are thrown on the scrap heap. The being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. He said, I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the community. As long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it what I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more I live. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch, which I've got a hold of for a moment. And I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. Namaste.